Okay, so next we have, in person, Gareth Icke, Gareth Icke, musician and activist, and son of David Icke, who was into good vibes and vibrational energy long before it became really trendy. Gareth?
Thank you.
Welcome up on stage, Gareth. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a real privilege to be here celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Liberland, so thank you so much for inviting me. It was quite interesting yesterday because I arrived at the airport and it was a really early flight, so I was kind of still a little bit sleepy. And I was supposed to look for a shuttle. And this guy walked up to me and he just said, Liberland. And I went, Liberland? He went, yes, come with me. And that was it. I just followed him. And so I got in the taxi, not the shuttle. And about half an hour later, I'm realizing, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not in the shuttle. I'm just in a taxi with a guy that I don't know, right? And then he started driving insanely fast in the middle of the road, right? And then he phoned someone and he had this huge argument. And I'm just sat there next to him, right? And the more this argument got heated, the faster he was going, right? And then I noticed that he only had one hand on the steering wheel, right? And his other arm was around the back of my seat, like I was like his college girlfriend or something. And I was like, okay, this is weird now. Because he said Liberland to me. And then it dawned on me, I was like, I'm being kidnapped, right? So then he pulls over in the middle of nowhere, right? No other cars around, no houses or anything. And he just pulls up to the side. And I was like, have I got time to like phone my wife and kids and tell them I love them, you know? So he gets out and he walks around the car and I'm definitely dead. And I'm expecting him to come here to open my door, obviously to drag me off to my end. And I look out and he's just going to the toilet in a field. So I was like, that's great. So who knows? Liberland's Minister for Transport right there, you know. But so what I've done, I've got a quote here from Mark Twain. Part of the reason I've done that is because it will hopefully make me look more intelligent than the cab driver story, right? So few things are harder to put up with than the annoyance of a good example. I would edit that slightly to few things are more of a threat to the establishment than a good example. And that's, for me, where Liberland comes in, right? Because what that does is it strips away this, veneer of impossibility. So if I say, okay, well, the goal then is to, say, climb Everest, for instance, right? I can say it's impossible to do that, and as long as no one else has done it, that's fine. I can just cling on to that, it's fine. And people will go, okay, maybe he's right, maybe it is impossible. The minute someone does it, well, I'm in trouble now because I can't use that excuse anymore of it's impossible, because of course it's not, someone else has done it. So then, I've got a choice. What do I do? Do I, get my head down, work really hard to climb it, or do I make excuses or whatever? Now, what you might think as well is actually, well, it's not just the establishment that hates the annoyance of a good idea, because kind of people are a little bit like that as well, aren't they? If someone achieves something, has success in something, a lot of the time people aren't particularly happy for them, really, right? And I that's quite depressing. But then I think actually that's learned behavior. That's not a natural way of thinking. I'll give you an example, right? My daughter's 6, and she's very good at gymnastics. She's got a natural talent, which she does not get from me at all, right? I'm not even sure I can touch my toes, to be honest. And so to try and kind of harness that talent, we take her to quite a good gymnastics club. And when you go in there, there's this huge room, and they go from ages of like 4, I think, all the way up to 16, right? And these 16-year-olds are doing these big flips and stuff. Now, anytime you learn something new, like a new move or whatever, or you pass a test, you go and you ring this bell, right? So that all the other kids can see. And when you look at what the 4-year-olds do when someone else does something, they are so happy for them, right? Even if they can't do it themselves, they're jumping up and down, they're clapping. And you just watch it go up through the ages, and it diminishes. And by the time you get to like 16, whenever one of them goes and rings the bell, all the others are stood there like, bitch. So that's not the natural order of things, do you know what I mean? That's a learned behavior. And I think a lot of it is because, the establishment is very much like that, and they try and mold us all to be, like them. And so that encourages me a little bit, in the sense that actually, if it's the natural order of things, which is to have empathy and to support each other and to, love each other, then we can get back to that. And if we can get back to that, then we've got half a chance. And that's where the example comes in, because a lot of stuff is theory. So I can stand here and I can, spout a load of stuff, and I can stand in a classroom, I can go on a podcast and whatever, and you can put these ideas out there, and people might go, yeah, all right, okay, take it or leave it. But without any action, nothing happens, nothing changes, not really. And I saw that a lot throughout the COVID time, where, to be fair, thousands of us knew that lockdowns were a ridiculous thing to do. It was a really bad idea. Even if you believe the official narrative of COVID and stuff, lockdowns were always going to do more harm than good. But the problem is the whole world was locking down, so there was no example. So I would have conversations with people, and they would say, well, yeah, I can see your way of thinking a bit, but it's a risk. Like, it's a risk, because, we don't know what's going to happen if we don't lock down. And then Sweden came along. Okay. Now, I don't know if it was the same around the world, so I can only speak from an English perspective, but Sweden was a real problem for the English establishment. It was a big problem for the health minister and everyone else, because what was happening was the media were actually starting to talk about Sweden, and they were asking, well, explain Sweden then, because they've not locked down, and, people aren't dropping dead in the street and all this kind of stuff. And they struggled with it. They couldn't really kind of get around it. And so again, I come back to Liberland as being that example for people that actually there is another way of doing it. And it's not just a theory, it's not just an idea, it's like, guys, we're literally doing it. And that's why, for me, it's such an honor to be involved in it, in, a tiny little way stood here talking. It's a privilege, because I think it has the opportunity to go much bigger, because it's not just an idea, it's look, we're doing it. And that is why I think, I know there's a situation with Croatia at the moment, and I have no doubt that there'll be lots of other things thrown in the way, because they don't want this good example. They don't want the world to look and go, actually, no, there is another way. Because actually, fundamentally, people just want to live freely, really, most people. But what they're taught, again, a learned behavior, is to fear the unknown. A fear of change, a fear of going against the status quo. I don't know what's going to happen. Whereas kids don't have that. You look at kids, they go out exploring, they ain't scared of anything until they've been taught to fear stuff, right? And so for me, if it's a learned behavior, it can be unlearned as well, by showing them examples and saying, look, we can do this. And then what people can do is they can look at Liberland and they can go, well, actually, that veneer of impossibility is gone. So when my government back in the UK, mate, they are a bunch of clowns, but when they say, we have to go to war, or we have to lock down again, or we have to increase taxes, which is what they're doing at the moment, or, we need to go back into austerity, you can go, well, no, we don't, because there's an example right over there. And then that causes a problem for the establishment. And so what you'll find, I hope, I pray to whoever's listening, that people will look at the idea of Liberland, and then will go back to their own countries all over the world and say, do you know what, yeah, no, we can do things differently. And actually, if the establishment isn't going to allow it, because they won't, then we'll do it on our own, and we'll start our own. Because there's so many people, like in this room, there's people, I think there's a live stream, if there is, there's people watching it, and there's millions of people all over the world that don't actually know about Liberland, right? And all these people are amazing, and they've got skills that are wide and varying, and they can really, really make a difference in the world. And I think, we focus on the negative all the time. I'm really guilty of it. My wife would be laughing if she was watching this. She's like, you're one of the most miserable people in the world. And obviously that's what I do working in media, because you have to expose the evil, because if you don't know about the evil, you're not going to fight back against it. But at the same time, there is so much good out there. There's so many amazing people. It's an absolutely incredible world. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that. We can keep our eyes on the prize that, we can succeed as a human race. All these divisions that are there are planted there. They don't come naturally. I look at my daughter again. She's in a school with kids who have got amputated limbs, kids who are all different colours. She doesn't know that. She doesn't notice it in the slightest, because that's taught behaviour, to see these differences in people, that actually we're all just one human family. Do you know what I mean? In fear of sounding like a bit of a hippie, I honestly believe that. And I think, if people can look at the example of Liberland and build their own communities, as they're starting to do, to be fair, little homesteads and stuff, but micronations, that would be absolutely incredible. And then they could all recognize each other, and then you could start to build it and build it and build it and build it. And who knows where this could go. I think it's really, really exciting. Really, really exciting. And And for me, just to be involved in it in a really small way is an absolute privilege. So thank you for allowing me to be here and to speak. It's an honor.
Thank you so much, Gareth.